Right. We will see how this goes. I did not run this demo last cohort, so it is my first time using MySQL Workbench. And we'll find out if I can pull it off in one go. The first thing we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is back up and talk about what we're talking about today. And that is AWS RDS, which is Relation Database Service. Yesterday, we covered EC2, and today we are going to cover setting up an AWS RDS and connecting to that from the EC2, because yesterday we were simply using the LAMP stack, which again is just Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So the first thing we want to do is update our security. Well, actually, let's back up a little more and talk about some of these benefits, right? So one of the benefits of RDS is it's supposed to be very scalable, flexible. It supports multiple database engines, so you're not restricted to just one, and allows for things like instancing, right? So you could take snapshots of your storage and you could restore from those snapshots. There are other benefits such as having synergy with all of the other AWS services. Well, not all, but like many of them. So things like security groups and having monitoring. With all of that available right out the box, it is faster to set up than a traditional LAMP stack. So far I have updated my security group. I added a new inbound rule. So if we edit here, we'll see what that is. I am opening up port 3306 with a default CIDR range of 0. And this should allow me to connect through MySQL Workbench. I'm not sure how much setup MySQL Workbench is going to take. I guess we'll find out. The next step is to create the database. And the database, we're basically going to configure this with a lot of default values. So we want the engine to be MySQL. We'll choose the latest version. We'll choose from the free tier, of course. We're going to name it however we want to name it. So let's do a standard create MySQL. This is not the latest version, but it's late enough. And we are going to choose our free tier, and we'll just name it database 1. I think I'm gonna use my name for the username, and I want this to be self-managed. Let's use this password that Chandra provided for us. And we'll just paste that again. From here, we want to, looks like we're going to be changing this out to T2 micro. So we wanted burstable classes, DB T2 micro. That's not an option, it seems. So we're gonna stick with tier 3.
Does it change anything if you include the previous generation classes?
I wonder if it's because we already chose the free tier and these are the only options in the free tier.
Let's see. Let's first try changing the tier. And looks like that opens up these. So let's go back to the free tier, and skipping that. Leaving that the same. Let's include previous generation classes, like I think Lewis suggested. And
Nothing.
Yeah, so I guess since it's all free, we can go for like the best performing one that we can get.
okay. These look very similar to me. I'm just gonna stick with T3. All right, let's go with general purpose SSD. Yeah, we're not gonna need a lot of craziness here because we're just doing a very simple MySQL demo. So we'll leave these at default values. 20 gigs of storage, and we want to leave this unchecked. All right, we also want a default VPC because we want to be on the same VPC as the EC2 that we create. So we're not going to create the EC2 just yet. We'll do it manually so we can get a little familiar with the AWS interface. And this is our default VPC, so that should be good. And then the last thing we want to do is set authentication. I'm going to use my security settings because that's where I opened up port 3306. And we definitely want to be in US East. Is it 1A? Is that Virginia? Or is that the zone that Chandra selected for us?
I know we're in US East 1, but I don't know if different letters are just different.
Yeah, let's see if this works. We'll just stick with 1A. And then it's saying no for additional configuration. So I think we're going to leave all of these, as many of these as default as possible. About authentication, it did want password authentication, and we don't need monitoring for now. All right, let's see. What are our estimated monthly costs? Free tier is available for 12 months, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're good. Let's go ahead and create this. Oh, it does not like this password. Wonder if I just manually type this out. Oh, I see. It can't have the following symbols, but Founder's password has that. I'm just gonna name this password. At least 8 printable ASCII characters. Okay. Let's see if that works. Nice. Okay, I'm gonna close that. I don't need any of that. So now we want to create an instance and we want to connect using MySQL Workbench. So from here, let's take a look at our dashboard, see what we have. Might take a few minutes to launch. So while that's happening, let's go ahead and create our EC2. This is the RDS demo. And is there, if we're doing MySQL, we should probably stick with Linux for the AMI. And I'm going to stick with T2 micro. I'm going to select the class's default key pair. The PC setting should be default. I don't want to create a security group. I want to select from an existing one. These can stay at default values. I only need one instance. And I think we're good to go. All right, let's go back to our RDS tab and see how we're looking. Okay, let's view the service health dashboard for our RDS. No recent issues. This is not what I want. Let's go back here.
It looked like there was a little box at the bottom where you were on the previous page that I think said connect to an instance, but I could be wrong.
Oh, here.
No, it was one of the other pages.
Okay.
I just know I saw it near the bottom. I thought,
Right. Has anyone heard from Saul? Just got a question from Edwin.
Last I heard, he's not going to be in the program anymore.
Okay. All right, thanks for the heads up. And anyone hear from Phil? I think he's still going to be in the program, but does anyone know? He was just here yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we were trying to connect to an EC2. So let's set up an EC2 connection. We don't want to set up a new instance. We want to connect to an existing instance. And that should be this. We named it RDS demo. Let's go ahead and continue. Cross availability zone charges might apply. Let's check. All right, let's see what this says. Is there anything here about changing our availability zone?
It looks like to do an RDS switch for availability zones.
Oh, sorry, one more time, please.
I was looking at what people were suggesting for creating new RDS on Amazon thread, and they just have people creating a brand new instance and just backing it up with a snapshot.
Okay.
So it might be easier to change the EC2.
All right, let's do that. Let's go ahead and, oh, you said it might be easier to change the EC2, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's go ahead and launch another instance. RDS demo 2. Let's make sure we select all the right things. Where are we setting the availability zone? Oh, no preference, default subnet in any availability zone. Okay. There's 1A. All right, that should be what we need. Gonna go ahead, create this. Of course, feel free to call it out if I'm missing something. And we're gonna launch. We're gonna go back to our instances and we're gonna terminate the first one. And let's give this a second to set up. Let's see if it's available from here. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna select set up EC2 instance again. Looks like it is available, so let's move forward. Nice. All right, a connection is being set up. Okay, so from here, if we go to the RDS, well, actually, let me pull up. I need to pull up, what is it called? MySQL Workbench. Where is the... Whoops. I have a very old version of Mac, so... All right, let's try DB Weaver. Is that DB Weaver? Why is that not? I've never heard of dbeaver or DB Weaver before.
DB Weaver just have you used like my Microsoft SQL? It basically allows you to have access your database like within the GUI.
Okay. So is dbeaver another app that I need to download and set up?
If you want to, I mean, if you have just a regular regular third party connection to like your connect to your database, and then that should be fine.
Like, so what are you suggesting?
I personally use DB Weaver, or usually if I'm using the EC2, I'll just download the MySQL, download whatever database you're using on the EC2 instance, and then just do it through command line.
Okay, yeah. demo was saying to use either MySQL or dbeaver, but I might have to look for an older version of MySQL Workbench if I want to go that route, because the version I downloaded isn't working with my machine.
I could do on your end. I could connect it from my DB Just as
Okay.
long as you get, as long as I get the RDS endpoint.
All right, let's do that. Let me get the endpoint. I'll send that over to you, and you could pick up where I'm leaving off.
Sounds good.
Cool. So now we want to grab the endpoints. Let's see. Here it is. It's basically under the databases connectivity and security page. I'm going to send this over to you via Slack.
Mine have also get the username and password.
Okay. Yeah, username should be just Julius, and password. I think password is just password. Cool. All right. Feel free to take over the screen share. Did my screen stop sharing? Did, right?
Yeah, I'm viewing Edwin's right now.
All right, so this is basically what DB Viewer looks like. So if you're going to use like any third party to be able to visually access your, let's say your database or RDS, then it will basically look around like how's it shown right here. It might look around a little bit different depending on the provider you're using. I know Microsoft has their own. It looks, but the concept is pretty much the same. You just go on the top left corner where you see the little plugin right here. Then this we're going to build a connection to your database or RDS. And between these, you end up choosing exactly what you build. So AWS RDS offers MariaDB, I believe MongoDB, PostgreSQL, MySQL, Oracle, and a couple more databases as well. But as long as you choose the right database you're trying to connect to, then there shouldn't be any issues. As long as your security group is configured correctly to accept any traffic to your database. So is this a MySQL database or Postgres? MySQL? Okay. So you end up choosing a database, click on next. Now it's going to ask you for a specific type of credentials, so your server host, which is going to be your RDS endpoint that ends up being populated on your AWS console. And am I good to show the RDS endpoint on here, or do I need to turn off my share screen?
You could share it. I don't see the harm in it. They saw it on my screen, so.
All right. Now, so when you create your RDS, you also have to create a database, or else it's going to be a little bit tricky to have access to it. Since when you do create it, when the database is created, there's a default database. Then later there's a database you end up creating on your end. And did we end up creating a database or?
Yeah, we named the database -1.
So were you saying that one has to be created before you get to this step, or this one?
Yes. It will be show on your AWS console when you're going down the steps, when you're choosing the engine, when you're choosing your type of public subnets you want, type of VPC, security groups. You just it should be within the drop-down menu. It says additional configurations, where you could be able to add your database name. Because usually some people end up forgetting about it, and when they try establishing a connection with a third-party system, it'll be test connection failed or won't be able to access it. And let's hope it's test connection. Usually, if the connection is good, it'll go pretty quick. Is you mind the security group that the RDS has assigned to it? You mind seeing if it allows if 3306 is open to everybody?
Yeah, let me see.
You mind checking also if I spelled it right as well. Database tag one.
Yeah, that looks right to me. Okay, so for our security group, yeah, it should be open to everybody. 306.
On your VPC, does it have DNS enabled and DNS hostname enabled?
Oh, let me check.
Because I know sometimes the default has it unchecked, and then later it won't allow connections with allow the RDS to have a connection with any outside.
Right. So we want to check. DNS resolution is enabled, DNS host names is enabled. What else should I check?
Is it using the default VPC?
Yeah,
And is public access yes or no?
where is that under?
It should be right underneath the DB subnet group. It should be public access. It should be clear. It should be enabled or yes, checked off on.
I see default VPC, network address usage metrics. And then in the other columns, things like, yeah, I don't see one for public access.
I think you might have created the. Let me see if it says connect to EC2 and it changes that. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. So since you connected it with the EC2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's only gonna allow the EC2 to have access, or your inbound, or your I believe your the own VPC network to have access to your EC2. If that makes sense. Because the moment when I click on connect to EC2 compute resource,
Mm-hmm.
it completely disables the ability to put public access to the RDS. So that means your RDS is completely closed off from anything outside the network of the VPC or AWS.
Right. Okay. Should we create another RDS and set the access to?
Yes, let me see if I'm able to connect to my personal. Yeah, that's not gonna be very good. So yeah, you might need to create an RDS, another RDS, but rather than checking off the box where you connect it with the EC2, you're just gonna have to just says don't connect to an EC2 component resource.
Okay. So let me share real quick so everyone can see that. Okay. So here in connectivity, instead of selecting connect to an EC2 compute resource, we're going to select yes for public access, because if we were to select this, that would disappear. Or wait, yeah, it gets grayed out. So
There is a way around it, but it's very tricky since you had to do a reverse proxy, I believe. Do your DB reverse, and you need to take the PEM file that your EC2 has access, that you build your EC2 with, then later you have to take the IPv4 of your EC2, then let it establish connection that way. That's a very secure way to do it.
Okay. So let's do it this way. We're going to set public access to yes. We're going to choose the existing VPC group, which is just the default one. We'll select 1A again. And we're leaving this unchecked, right, Edwin?
Yeah, that should be fine. Let additional configuration.
Okay,
That's
3346. Password authentication, we don't need monitoring. Let's just take a look at this. We'll name this database.
And Jordan, this is where you were asking about where you initialize your database. This is where within additional configuration and this dropdown. This is where you, if you have a database in mind that you want to initialize when your RDS is being created, that's where you put it.
Cool. So I think all the rest of this is good. All right. Something like the dash. I'm gonna use an underscore. And close that. So let's go and get our endpoint for this one. Might take a while. While we're waiting, we should still be able to set up a connection to our existing EC2.
Would it automatically get rid of the?
Let's find out. Let's actually let's give you the endpoint. Let's see if you can connect, and then we'll connect to an EC2 and see if that kicks you off.
Because I've never really done the connect with EC2 that way. I usually just put my EC2 in a private network, I mean a private sub, and then let it from there. I'll just close off all outside connection. Or just use terminal or command line.
Okay, this is still setting up. Let's go ahead and we're going to delete the first database because we no longer need it, unless anyone has any objections. I don't need a final snapshot because it doesn't really have any data, and I don't want to retain any backups. I acknowledge that upon instance deletion, everything is going to be gone. I changed the username to admin, by the way. Password's going to be the same. While we're waiting on that, let's just take a quick glance at today's challenge. So it looks like we're going to be setting up a T2 Micro MariaDB server, create security group with proper port opening, create a database called DevOps, create a table with tools. You'll be inserting 2 rows, and you'll be using PHP admin to create admin console. Here's the new endpoints. Where's Slack? Okay. And I'll let you take over again, Edwin.
Sounds good. Was the security group selected same?
It should be, yeah. Let me just double check that.
Just for now, you mind if we do just all connections,
Shoot.
all ports and all connections?
Yeah, I could do that. Also, I think I did not select the right security group. Let me see if I could change that real quick. I think I must have left it on default by mistake.
When you guys are messing around with RDS, like later on in the course, you're gonna figure out that so adjusting your security groups, your subnets, your VPC network is very important on how to one establish a connection with your RDS, one connecting it through rest of your EC2s, and it gets very frustrating because the RDS itself is gonna deploy all nice and say everything's all good, but you're gonna be like, why can't I access it even though I have everything open?
That's good to know.
I'm just going to go to this security group, the default one, and I'm going to add an inbound rule for port 3306.
Is the database name different from the database identifier? Because I know we named it database _2, but then the identifier still says database -2.
So the identifier is how you're able to find it on your AWS console. The database name is the actual database within the RDS being pushed out.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, you were saying how we need to make a database in order to do this before, and that was what you were doing earlier.
Yeah, because when you start doing it a lot, you can be like, oh, I named the identifier. Sometimes you think that's your database name, but defaultly, on default, if you don't make a database, then you won't have if you don't initialize a database within your creating of the RDS, then it won't populate.
Okay, thanks.
Meanwhile, Julian is figuring that out. Just to show what I was talking about earlier, the way you could connect your RDS when it's completely privatized and you have it all closed out only to your VPC network, is that you're going to be end up using something called a bastion host. And all it is you go to your network configuration, proxy. Host is going to be the EC2. You go to profile. Host is going to be the EC2 IP. Then the username of your EC2 user, which is usually this should be default. When you guys know when you guys SSH and it says EC2 user, then it has an @ with the IP at the end. That's all it is. That's what the username is. Just the EC2 tech user. Obviously, the port says you're using the EC2 to establish a connection with your RDS. Then you're using the public key and where your public key is located at. As you see, there's the file path of my public key. Then you do a test tunnel configuration, and it will test out the connection from a private RDS. If you want to completely close off to the public, so only you have access to it.
Well, Edwin, give it a shot. I updated the default security policy.
So before you guys do click on finish, you guys first want to test connection. What test connection is sending packets and receiving packets back, is making sure there's an established link from your operating system to your RDS. Once you receive it's getting connected, you press OK, then you press on finish, and then right here is populated for our RDS. Then it should populate your databases, users, tables. Anything within that sorts. Then if you want to go from your if you want to create stuff within there, there's obviously you open up SQL script and you run a SQL script on DBbeaver, and then from there you could create your databases, tables, or and store any type of information you guys want to.
Can you create a table right now?
Oh, it's been a while.
Is that going to be different if you're using, you mentioned Mongo or any other NoSQL? Because then they don't use query language, right?
So usually writing code in SQL usually stays the same or kind of the same between all databases or any query language. It's just the way that some use select, others might have it worded differently. But everything the logic behind it is pretty much the same.
And those work for the NoSQL databases?
NoSQL, I have very too little no experience in NoSQL. My experience is between like SQL, PostgreSQL, and a little bit of MariaDB, but it's been a while. So, what will be Julius, if you know the syntax created?
I'm typing something right now. Let's
Oh
just
yeah, Tristan said it's pretty much, okay, just like JSON files. So probably, I guess you would just write JSON files, right?
Well, I don't know if that's true. I think that's one of the last things I heard, but I haven't looked into NoSQL.
So for NoSQL,
Because I think NoSQL is just stored as a huge document, a single huge document.
Yeah, I think it is document store. So I think you query it. They've got specific query ways, but like with GraphQL and stuff like that too, you have to query it with sort of like a JSON structure body in the request. And then same thing when you're like posting it, it's the same JSON structure.
hmm,
Yeah, let's do something like this. Let's open the meeting. Nice.
So when you run a script and you click right here, it's called a execute. It's going to execute the SQL query on the left right here. If you guys are able to look at that play button. Once you click on that and it shows right here that it went through, you're gonna double click on your database. Then you're gonna click on refresh. So it refreshes the RDS. You could get the most up to date what's in the contents of the RDS. Is there anything else you want me to show, Julius?
Yeah. Let's just run through snapshots real quick because I think that's part of the assignment too. So keep everything there. I'm gonna go ahead, take over the share screen just for a hot second here. Snapshots are pretty straightforward. If we go back to our console, we go back to RDS, we'll see snapshots on the left. So here, let's take a snapshot. We're going to select database 2. We'll just say people because we made a people table. I don't know what's going to accept the dash. Nope, it doesn't like the underscore. I'm just going to use camel case. So here's my snapshot. Let's go ahead and Edmund, let's go back to you. Let's have you delete that table.
Deleting it is just erasing another plane, right? Or is actually not that.
I think you want to do a drop table on people. Or yeah, try to delete. Okay, I think let's go back to drop because I think delete might be specifically for columns. I don't use.
I think my thing might be a little bit wrong.
I think it is drop table because like deletes for like records and stuff.
Mm, There you go. Are you going to create a new RDS with a snapshot?
Can you refresh? The table's gone, right?
Yeah, the table's gone.
Okay, cool. So let's go back to RDS. And yeah, let me restore. Oh, looks like it's still creating the snapshot. Let me refresh this real quick.
Are you sharing your screen right now, Julius? I'm trying to figure out how you swap between your screen sharing.
Oh, my bad. I selected it, but I didn't hit share.
Okay.
Is this the right screen? Do you see people table?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So it looks like it's still Let me refresh, see if that still says creating. Not yet available. Ooh, that might take a while.
So I think Snapchat says about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much is in there.
Got it. Okay.
And I think it's also depending on the size of your RDS as well.
All right. So we go to the snapshot under the RDS console, and we would really just select restore snapshot. Oh, it says it's completed. Okay, cool. Like blanking out, looking for a percentage here. All right, let's restore the snapshot. I think that should stay the same. The name must be unique across all DB instances. Can I leave this blank, Edwin?
For let me section.
The
So
DB
go to I think it automatically makes it one.
Okay, cool. All right. This is it's a little different. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Versatile because that's what we had selected for the original RDS. I'm gonna go back to DBT3 micro, which is what we had selected originally. All of this is the same. Should I hit yes for public access just so we could see the table restored on your end, Edwin? The PC group, this, well, we could leave it at default now that I've added the new security group rule. And I think everything looks good, right?
The database.
Where's, oh, right, and the additional configuration. No.
Actually no, it should have I think it should be fine.
Because we're restoring, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm hitting it. Oh, it does want an identifier. Okay. So now you're gonna have to connect to DB2. So let me grab the endpoint again for you. Once this finishes. And it's taken a while. Oh, right. While this is waiting, I guess, we were gonna try to connect the first database to an EC2 to see if that was going to take away the public access, right, Edwin?
Yes.
So let's go back to our first database. Well, not this one because that one's gone. So database 2, I'm gonna scroll down to where it's gonna let us set up an EC2 connection. We're gonna select our existing EC2 instance. We're gonna continue. And all of this looks good. So now we're waiting on. Okay, connection is set up. Let's go back to your screen, Edwin, and let's see if you can still connect to database 2.
So you want me to just get rid of the connection, let it test it again?
No, just go back to the database 2 connection and see if it still connects.
I'm not having any issues. I think the best way to test it is going to be to get rid of the connection.
Why is that? What's wrong with this? It looks like it's working, right?
Yeah. I would say it's working, but just to like cover our bases.
So I think the same way when we've created database 1, we had selected to connect to an EC2, which meant we weren't able to set public access. That we weren't able to change that. So setting that to no, we weren't able to change it to yes. And I think setting it to yes and then connecting to an EC2 afterwards, it's the same thing. We're not able to change that back to no.
Yeah, I think creating it publicly first and let it connecting it to the EC2 is a way to go. Because I just disconnect and let it connect it again, let it work fine.
Cool. Not that we'll be doing that too often though, because I think just remembering how a lot of these lessons are written, like for most of these, you're going to want to keep that unchecked. You want to keep that public access disabled. Man, this snapshot still has not.
Refresh the screen, maybe?
Okay. Cool. All right, I'm sending you the endpoint. All right, this one is just DB2. No dashes or anything.
Well, from what I remembered, we just left it open publicly, public access the entire time, the entire cohort.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, there was extra credit on figuring out how to privatize it and let her have completely privatize your RDS, not have no public access, and let her have it connected to your EC2. But that was later. That was just for extra credit for the first one, I think, assessment. There we go. Bottom here is a snapshot. Top here is the original.
Nice.
Are you connected to both of them at the same time?
Yeah, you can have multiple connections.
Oh, okay.
All right, good stuff. I'm gonna cut the recording here and we can take a 15-minute break. Breakout rooms are already open and we'll reconvene at 9.